So what I'm going to do today, thank you very much for coming. So ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to have you. And I've been here before. I've been an invited guest speaker to a conference of diaspora. So I've been here for you, and I know Mrs. Gan pretty well. Lovely person, very engaging. And my good friend Shears Riviere, Professor Riviere, he has been my right hand. He has been helping me quite a bit. And he has been appointed in a very significant position of our Emotional Wellbeing Institute, which I will talk about later on. Okay, so thank you very much, Shears. And thank you very much, all of you. It's good to have you. It's a small audience, but I know there are lots of people overseas in different parts of the world who has got the link of the Zoom connection, so they're watching me. Hi, everyone, if you can see me. So we've got some in Australia, in Geneva, and England, and France, and other places like that. So thank you very much for supporting. And when the program will be available on YouTube, it will be also available here at the Mahatma Gandhi Institute, the Open University, and also on our website. This is our website here, www.awb.emotionalwellbeing.institute. So have a look at that. It's evolving. So what I'm going to do is, I'm not here to talk or give a lecture on emotional well-being, but I'll be quite happy to answer any question or questions towards the end of my presentation if you want to enhance your understanding of the concept of emotional well-being. When we talk about emotional well-being, a lot of people still mistake that term to mental health or mental ill health. Oh, you mean by mental illness? I said, no, mental illness is something different. Mental illness is more clinical. When we talk about depression, anxiety disorder, schizophrenic or psychosomatic disorders and so on, that's a different area. Emotional well-being is here. I feel very happy today. You know why I feel very happy? Because Mrs. Gan and the MGI has given me this opportunity to share my knowledge and experiences with you. And by the fact that you are receptive, you want to know, you are here, you're supporting me, and lots of my colleagues who are listening to this presentation on Zoom, I feel good about it. I feel really good about it. So that's emotional well-being. All right, that's emotional well-being. And also, it's pleasurable to share my knowledge and skill, because I know for a fact that today I'm going to plant a lot of seeds in your mind. A lot of seeds in your mind. So I'm going to introduce new terms or elaborate on terms you may be already familiar with so that it grows. So when you go out of this lecture theater, when individuals, after the end of the Zoom presentation, I'm pretty positive they're going to talk about the subject. They're going to talk about the new topics I'm going to be introducing. So it will spread. It's like a ripple. My role, I do a lot of talk at different forums, and these are the two driving forces for me. How can I create ripples with the audience? How can I plant a seed? How can I, when you have a little pond, you throw a little pebble in that pond, a little caillou, what we have, ripples. So that's what I'm doing, okay? So let's spread the words. So thank you very much, and that I feel good about it. Now, the only thing is about ripples. It's all right to create ripples, but if you have a pond, and in the pond you have got rocks, you have got dead trees and dead branches and stuff like that, what do we have? Obstructions. The ripples do not flow accordingly. True? They do not flow accordingly. So in this world, what I observe is, although you're trying to create beautiful ripples to make a change, to make a difference, but occasionally we have obstructions. And who are the obstructions? Who create those obstructions? We, individuals, because of our value system, because of our set principles, because we have created a world which is narcissistic world. We are very self-centered. We are egoistic, egocentric. We tend to do things what's good for us, what's good for me. As far as things are good for me, who cares about other people? I'm not saying everybody. Occasionally we have got people like that. So therefore the barriers of the ripple is us. We also got barriers about not just attitude, we have got barriers created because of policies of nations. We have got barriers created because of operational policies. We have got barriers created because of a top-down system. Autocratic management, autocratic system. We have got barriers created because what we have done is created toxic people, toxic personalities, toxic work environment, toxic home, toxic communities. Okay, so these are some of the barriers. So, so what I'm going to talk about is a global burden of emotional well-being. We have created a burden in our world, and how we can tackle that is a bit of a challenge. And that's me. The reason why I have put down all those qualifications, not to show off, but to really to demonstrate that I'm here today. I was a village boy. I was a very shy village boy who never finished my high school, had only 4 GCE O levels. To be able to reach the stage I'm at, I'm very humbled. I feel very, very humble. I didn't have scholarship. I had to work hard for studying. Most of my study has been part-time, working full-time with a family and so on. But I'm very, very proud. My biggest ambition was to just sit down in a lecture theater of a university. That was my biggest ambition. But I never knew that one of these days I would be a professor in the field of health. I would be a dean for international program in the field of health. I would have, been doing that. When you look at the foundation, I've been foundation president of this, foundation director of this, and so on and so forth. You plonk me in a position, in a new position, I do well generally. I realized later on that I have got certain characteristics within me that those characteristics make me do things, make me achieve things. I didn't know that. No one pointed those characteristics to me. Nobody said, oh, Basseer, you're good at this or you're good at that, so therefore we help you. I learned. Now I'm understanding that I'm a strategist. Come up with a new idea. I'm a strategist. I never knew that. Okay? I am a driver. Put me in a position I can drive things. I'm a facilitator. I'm not bragging about myself. All of those characteristics came up when I applied for CEO positions. They have to do what we call psychometric test. So the psychometric test determined that I've got those characteristics. In a way, I knew I've had those characteristics. Now I know, because when you've put me in a position like a foundation position, I make things happen. So this Emotional Wellbeing Institute is my baby, so to say. It took me so many years to develop that based on research and so on. And I'm proud to be the founder. I've been the founding president, but the task has got so big, we have appointed another president who's doing the day-to-day work. And my role is President Emeritus, looking at the global things. So my main role is creating international, regional, global engagement. We've been having some very, very interesting talk with Mrs. Guy, and so hopefully good things will happen with MGI. We want to work together very closely with MGI. because that's part of this regional engagement, okay, and other things. So I've got a PhD, that's in mental health from Australia. I've done a lot of work in the area of mental health. So I understand clinical manifestation of mental illness and so on and so forth. I'm also a psychologist, did my BA Honours Psychology in London. And then I'm a member of other things, yeah. Okay, and I've also got a master's in education. So these are the qualifications. So I've got a eclectic background. I have got a pluralistic background, like Mrs. Gowan said. I've got a plural set of experiences. I've got a health background, because I've worked in the Department of Health. I've set up, in England, for example, a Center for Professional Development for a regional health service, so that's my background, in a way. And I've done a lot of work in the area of Indigenous affairs in Australia. I was a foundation president to set up strategies to address social and emotional well-being of Indigenous population of Australia and Torres Strait Islanders. So I learned a lot about Indigenous people. I'm not Indigenous, I look like Indigenous, so my relationship with the Indigenous people was great. And my role was to build up the capacity of Indigenous people, capacity building. I was about, I think, 2 to 3 years, the founding president of that association, set up strategies, but my role was to train, to prepare future directors of that particular program. And the future directors had to be an Indigenous person. My critique of the Indigenous scenario was that, a long time ago, for so many years, the Western people used to go to Australia and do research with Indigenous population, used to change things for them, introduce them to different things, the Western way of living. And Indigenous people are still suffering. They are still suffering. And a large number of my friends, of my colleagues and individuals I know, they are still experiencing what we call the stolen generation. Stolen generation. When the British went to Australia, they took the small children, Indigenous children, away from their family, educated them in English, in a Western way, dressing in a Western way, taught them in English, and so on and so forth. So what we have now, they're suffering. They're still suffering because they are not accustomed to their ways of life. They lost that culture, the language, the food, and so on and so forth. And the recent problem is such that there's a division amongst the Indigenous people themselves. Those who are in that stolen generation group, they are not totally considered to be the true Indigenous people because they are different. They speak differently. They eat differently. They can't speak the Indigenous languages. So when we talk about emotional well-being, we tend to create the emotional harm to individuals and groups and nations. And I'm going to introduce the term which is called iatrogenic or iatrogenesis. It's a medical term, iatrogenic. Say, for example, if you go to see a doctor, the doctor gives you a wrong diagnosis, and the diagnosis follows with the wrong treatment. So what happens? More complications. So the term iatrogenic fits in very well with that concept. So in our society, that's a word I have created in our society. I've transferred the term iatrogenic from a medical term to a community term. We are creating harm to each other quite a bit, continuously. Not just us here. Nations creating harm to each other. I presented a talk at the convention at the UN. I presented quite a few talks at the UN, and I talked about this iatrogenesis. And TV like Al Jazeera interviewed me, and I said, look, the countries where we have conflicts. Why do we have conflicts? Because we are creating harm to each other. Because of greed. I want more. If you have got something, I want it from you. If you don't give it to me, I'll fight you. I'll use a punitive approach. That's what's happening. So it's a true sense of iatrogenic. And I actually presented at the at the convention itself. When you present it at the convention, United Nations convention, they give you just 1.5 minutes to present a concept. Big convention, okay? If you go beyond 1.5 minutes, they cut you off. So there's a panel, and you get a chance to present a concept. They debate it afterwards, and they will make it policy. I've had that occasion to present at the United Nations. 2 things I presented. One was about the notion of iatrogenic or iatrogenesis, the harm we're creating to each other in the world, nations creating harm to each other, and so on and so forth. Okay? And I don't mince my word. The world is full of iatrogenesis, okay? The other thing, based on my mental health background, I talked about labeling for people with mental illnesses. We do assessments of clients or individuals. I have come across psychiatrists and other professionals coming up with a diagnosis of an individual without actually assessing them face to face. So they look at the documentation and come up with a diagnosis. So we're creating more harm to those people. I do a lot of court work in Australia and have defended a lot of clients with misdiagnoses. I fight back. I can be very soft, but I can be very hard. And I question the judges who came up with the wrong diagnosis. The court, the legal system tend to be more punitive. They have got a punitive approach. I questioned psychiatrist diagnosis. I questioned the judge's thing. And I said, excuse me, sir, to the judge, excuse me, your approach in this courtroom is not wanted because you are creating more harm to not just the clients, but to the community. Where does the word labeling come from? We are very easy to label individuals. I question that. So we need to be fighting for stuff like that. So I've got a very pluralistic background, and emotional well-being is a worldwide burden and challenge. We are all vulnerable to emotional well-being setback during our lives. Vulnerability affects our personal, professional, families, communities, work lives, and our nations. Vulnerability potentially makes us unhappy with diminished resilience. The resilience, the inner force, the strength within us. If you don't have strong resilience, that's a killer. A lot of people give up because of poor resilience. When they give up, they go into depression, anxiety phase, suicidal, and so on, okay? So they become less effective, less productive, and so on. Look what's happening now with the COVID-19, with the lockdown. When we talk about emotional well-being, a lot of people going through emotional upheaval. They're experiencing work-life financial insecurity, anxieties and stress of working from home, lack of continuation in medical treatment because of lack of transport, or they can't travel, or they don't have people to go with them, or we don't have facilities which can continue on with the usual treatment. So we have had this problem. Social exclusion and bereavement. I like President-elect Biden's statement, Joe Biden, America. He says, in your home, when you're sitting at breakfast table or dinner table, if there's a chair empty, that chair would have been the chair of a member of the family. That person is not there. Why? Because suffered from this COVID-19 and the person passed away. So this is just an example of what's happening across the board, okay? And the bereavement, not so much now, the bereavement in early February, March, April, when a person passed away, you couldn't even go to the cemetery with that particular person because of confinement. And I know that a large number of people are still grieving. Okay? So we have created upheaval. Inaccessibility for shopping for food, that's still existing. Domestic pressure and violence. Statistics will show that domestic violence has gone up. Abuse, not just physical abuse, but social abuse, emotional abuse. Abuse of the elders, abuse of the children. Can you imagine you're confined with small children in your home? The children can't go out to play. Obviously, if they're confined, they're going to be naughty and so on. So we have the abusing taking place. Divorce rate is higher. Marital disharmony is higher. And that's been created by this COVID. And then fear of contaminating self and others. So we stay in a place like that. Now, before that, I would just give you one or two examples from my professional practice of what we're talking about emotional upheaval. I'll just give you 2 or 3 examples. I do a lot of work internationally. I was referred to a family by the International Red Cross. And this particular family were escaping the war-torn areas like, the Middle East. So while they were running away as refugees, I don't like the term refugees, I prefer the term humanitarian entrance. So if a person who is supposed to be a refugee comes to a new country, that person is not a refugee anymore. However, we still call them refugees. So we continue to label them, and that has got more effect, harmful effect, okay? So this family running away, husband, wife, 2 sons, 2 daughters. They were running away for safety, and they got stuck at the border of Lebanon, refugee camps. But on the journey, the husband got killed in front of the family members. The mother, she got hurt in the back, spinal injury. She can't walk. She's in severe pain. One of the daughter is disabled. The 2 sons, they're at an age where they are wanted by their country. They are wanted because they want them back so that they can fight and so on and so forth. Now, so this family got stuck at the border of Lebanon. And I got recommendation from the International Red Cross to assess them from a humanitarian ground, to assess them. And my assessment, my objective was to assess them in such a way that I highlight the difficulties the family is going through. The mother cannot move, cannot do anything at all. The daughter, 16-year-old daughter, who is like the mother figure. The other sister is disabled, and the 2 sons are confined to the home. That's the life we have been living. So I had to make a case so that they could get benefit. So I made a strong recommendation that they should be transferred. The mother should be transferred to another place where treatment could be implemented, okay? So that's the work, and this is just a simple case. I'll give you another case of a gentleman who was running away. He was running away, and he had his wife who got killed in front of him, 2 sons, 1 son was shot in front of him, the other son managed to escape. So he was the sole survivor, and he was in a refugee camp, so to say, in Geneva. I got permission to visit him. I had to show my passport and so on. The guy was so slim. He took me to his room. All I had was a small bed. In Hindi, we call it katia, the wooden bed, and a little table, He offered me a cup of tea in his dirty cup. I didn't refuse. I had a cup. I sat down on his bed, and he shared me his stories. He shared me his stories. He got a bundle of, the papers which you wrap cigarette with, and he had written his stories in those papers. I couldn't read it, but it was there. Whilst he was traveling, he was cutting people's hair. So he had a comb and he had a pair of scissors. And he gave me his comb as a present. I was so touched. So I said to him, look, what do you do here? I'm confined to my room. I occasionally meet with one or two persons. Are you spiritual? He said, yes, I'm very spiritual. So what do you do about your spirituality? Nothing, there's nothing to do. And I said to him, okay, if I give you a book, a spiritual book, can you promise me that you will share what's written in there? He said, yes, I will do that for you. So I was traveling to London. I got a book well wrapped in a box, beautiful, and I gave that to him. And I said, can you do me a favor? Can you get together with about 4 or 5 of your colleagues in the evening, after dinner, you sit down and you share what's in that book. And then you share your difficulties. He was the happiest person. But sadly, he passed away. Next time I visited Geneva, he passed away, okay? So it really helped me to understand what some of these people are going through. We are lucky in Mauritius. We don't see these upheavals. Now, when he was describing his experiences, I've still not overcome that. He said, I saw a young lady. She was violated. Not only that, they tied up the young lady's nipples with a string and hung that in a branch and then shot her. And he witnessed that. All right? So these are just 1 or 2 examples I'm sharing from an international perspective. So this is what we have in our world. Terrible world. Terrible, terrible world. Why do we do that? I don't know. So it's a fight for us. It's a fight for our institute. It's a fight for our institute. We want to make a difference. Now, we came up with this logo with the ants. We're still developing that logo. And when somebody saw that logo first time, he said, are you selling insecticide to kill the fulmine, to kill the ants? I said, no. It's a philosophy of the ants we like. So when we look at the philosophy of the ants, the Emotional Wellbeing Institute believes in the philosophy that the biggest lessons in life come from the smallest things, such as the ants. The work of the Emotional Wellbeing Institute is challenging and shall continue to be so, and rewarding. Like the ants, the Institute shall not quit, as it shall persevere until a result to a challenge is found, and furthermore, opportunities and strategies to implement solutions are determined. The Emotional Wellbeing Institute shall learn from ants to be brave and courageous, to ignore little diversions, but think of the bigger picture. Commit to the practice that the sustainability of our next generation is everybody's business, and that we need to adapt to our surroundings accordingly. The knowledge and the best practice models must be shared with the Emotional Wellbeing Institute, establishing collaboration, cooperation, cohesion, synergy through a multi-pronged transnational consortium model. That's what we have got in our philosophy. I'll show you in a minute, okay? Like the ants, the Emotional Wellbeing Institute shall not be intimidated by the size of its challenges, but create opportunities to address these challenges accordingly. Ants value teamwork. They are organized and get the job done. They demonstrate diligent effort, hard work, are self-disciplined and self-reliant. They are driven by purpose, such as the Institute being dedicated to facilitating the creation of societies and nations feeling goodness and flourish. Planning strategically, thinking and preparing ahead, carrying out workloads that can be effectively handled, and serving one another are few additional processes embedded in the philosophy of the Institute. Okay? So that's the work we're doing. I will introduce you very, very briefly about the concept of the Emotional Wellbeing Institute. It's working very well. It's global, but I'm very, very protective of the framework because of copyright. We're in the process of copywriting it. We are in the process of patenting it. Okay? So I'll give you a snippet of the information, so don't feel hurt if I don't project everything on the board in a minute, okay? You are most welcome to work together with us. You can even work from a local perspective. And hopefully we'll be engaging with Mahatma Gandhi Institute, and they will work as a partner with us, okay? And you will hear more about that. So I can give you more examples of, from a medical term, all right? I love children. I like children. But I get very hurt when children are affected during what we call the critical stage of their development. Critical stage of their development. There's a certain stage where they need to meet their needs, social, psychological, health needs, and so on and so forth. And if those needs are not met, they miss the boat, so to say. Once they miss the boat, they have problems later on in the year of adolescence. Large number of our difficulties, our challenges, our problems are during the adolescence years. Early setup of psychosis, depression, substance abuse, conflict, and so on and so forth, because their needs are not met at those critical stage of development. A lot of parents don't understand, school teachers don't understand, community don't understand. We tend to harm children. I'm very, very critical of the harm we're creating to children in our society here in Mauritius. I'm going to be not mincing my word. We are overtly credential-driven in Mauritius, overtly credential-driven. I've got my neighbors' children. The moment they get up early in the morning, what they do? Go to lessons, tuitions. They rush back home, quick breakfast. They may be having their sandwiches in one hand, drinking, catch the bus to go to school, come back home, more tuitions. Weekend, more tuitions. Where are the time for their family? Where are the time for their peers? Where are the time for play? We think that if they study hard, they get good qualification, everyone is fighting for distinctions and so on, they will do well in society. But that's a fallacy. They might do well academically, but how about their social development? And if they miss that during that critical stage of development, it's very, very difficult to catch up. The other thing which is emerging amongst the youngsters is a phenomenon coming through. It's the phenomenon of digital phenomenon. A sort of mental illnesses are being created by the fact that children are preoccupied, over-occupied with computers, with games. They don't have personal relationship as such. When we were growing up, we had friends, we could talk face to face, we could play together. Now, they have got the digital. So we are creating a syndrome. I know children who don't go to sleep. They wake up 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, waiting to get a message from their friends. And if they don't get that message, they get upset next day. So they go to school all tired. We don't know. I have observed this is happening. I'm very frightened of the future generation, to be frank. If they continue doing what they're doing now, so to say, they miss the boat. Where does the socialization process come in? Are they sufficiently socializing? Are they developing sufficiently their social skill, their communication skill? So if they're on the computer all the time, they're not. Okay? But parents say, oh yes, our bons enfants, they're very quiet, they're always studying, they're in their room. You know, that's fine. They're not creating any problems. But they're creating problems for themselves. Okay? So we got that. Now, abuse for children, for example, when I read the newspapers occasionally, here in Mauritius, they got lots of abuse. Grandmother being sexually abused, young children being violated sexually, bodies found in the sugarcane field. That's not uncommon. But these are just a product of our society. Where is that coming from? Who is responsible for that? I did an interview on the radio, NBC Radio, the day when they found this young lady in the sugarcane field, and they asked me questions about that. I said, Russ, I don't know the case, but can I just mention that based on my experience, that the person who abused this girl is a very close relative, like an uncle. And as a matter of fact, it was uncle. All right? So what's happening to our society? Okay? And then the reporter said, oh, but what can we do about it? I said, well, before you can do anything about it, you got to have the facts and figures. Can I ask you a question? Do we have a trend? Do we have cases like this frequently? Say, yes. Do we know the statistics? What was the location where this particular person was violated? What was the age group? Who violated that? So once we have got the trend, we don't have those statistics. Okay? And so we got, I'll give you one more example about work situation, the mental health or emotional well-being in work. A lot of people become less productive, not because they are lazy, not because they are not skillful, but it's because the culture, the environment we have created at the workplace. Bullying, harassment, discrimination. We have got terms like presenteeism, present. In body, you are present. You appear to be busy doing this, shuffling here and there. 10 times you go to the toilet, you look busy. But productively, you are not very productive. Okay? So you come to work on time, you finish on time. Okay? So we have toxic personalities at work. We have got toxic work environment. We have got toxic management. I do a lot of work with executives. I'll give you 2 examples of toxic individual. There was a professor of chemistry, a professor, older gentleman, Western gentleman. I worked with him. Why? Because he became very depressed and suicidal. Not because he has got any clinical disorder, but he became depressed and suicidal because of his boss. The boss was a lady, so I'm not discriminating, but the boss was a lady, and she was lesser qualified. So she created barrier for this professor to move forward in his career. There was a lot of professional jealousy. So this guy got, suffocated, if you like. got very depressed. So I worked with him, and he brought along his wife as well. And the wife was in tears, begging for me to help him. And I said to him, look, it's obvious that you don't get on well. You're more qualified, you're more experienced. Do you want to be in that position? Do you want to be working there? I said, I don't know, I've got no choice. I said, why not? You have a choice. You are a professor. You have done a lot in society. You have contributed a lot, so you have reached a stage where you can use your skill, knowledge, qualification to do other things. I helped him to get a job as a dean at a university. So we got things like this. I worked with a bank manager. You will think a bank manager got no problem. And that bank manager has got problem because of the regional director. Because he was doing well. And professional jealousy stopped him from doing better. So I can go on, I give you a lot of examples. So we must value emotional well-being as integral to health and the basis for the well-being and effective functioning of individuals, communities, and nations. We must make a multifaceted and pluralistic effort using a whole of society approach. And I'll say something about that later on. Our institute is actually working from that perspective, the whole of society perspective. How can the whole society work together and help each other, understand each other? That's the only way to resolve stuff like that. Not creating more divisions, but creating cohesions, synergy, okay? This will ensure emotional well-being at the center of mental health efforts to leverage the well-being of population. The definition, not definition, but some characteristics, if you like, of well-being. This is a model derived from Seligman. The term PERMA. We feel good because we have generated positive emotions within ourselves, not negative emotions, positive. We are in the process of engagement. We engage with people, individuals, not just your family members, your friends, your colleagues, community. We engage in a very authentic way. Not just because I want to become friends with you because there is something in it for me. There's the advantage for me to derive from that particular person. Okay? The relationships is very important. The personal relationships, professional relationship, family relationships, and so on. The meanings, whatever you do, we need to have a meaning. We have to have a meaning. We have to use what we call a critical analytical approach. If things are working well for you, we need to reflect. Why do we think the things happen well for us? Can we repeat that so that I get positive reinforcement, if you like? A critical analytical approach. If things doesn't happen well for me, do I get mad and bad and aggressive? Or do I accept that something has not turned out to be the way I wanted it to be? But the question is, what can I do about it? So you analyze that. You reflect on it. We talk about reflection in action and reflection on action. Reflection in action. I'm in action with you now. So I'm reflecting on my presentation, what I'm saying, how I'm saying it. I'm also reflecting on you. There's a lot of eye contact. There's a lot of smiles. There's a lot of nodding. So there's a lot of good feedback for me. That encouraged me to move forward, okay? And I can reflect in action. I can go back home tonight and say, let me see how this presentation went. Did I do well? If not, did I do badly? Why not? What's the reason for that? How can I improve on it? So if we were to reflect in action and on action, everything we do in every part of our life, we are learning. We're developing what we call growth within ourselves. We grow. Everybody has to grow. We cannot be static. We cannot maintain status quo. We have to grow. And the only way to grow is to learn from our experiences. But it's a skill we have to learn, okay? And accomplishments. We need to celebrate our accomplishment. We don't rely on people to say, pat on your back and say, well done, congratulations. We need to learn to value our own accomplishment. This is what we call intrinsic motivation. If I do something good, I feel good about it, so I feel motivated, I feel encouraged. I don't need other people. It's good to have other people coming and saying, yes, you have done well, okay? But we have to develop those skills. Leveraging experience of emotional well-being. So we have rising level of sustenance and dignity, being fully engaged, a true sense of purpose, authentic empowerment. I like that authentic empowerment. I'm very critical of advocates. You know, in Mauritius, we have got 340 plus NGOs. Maybe more. NGOs. And what are they doing? They are supposedly helping the communities. They are advocates. I rest assured that a lot of those advocates are good people, very dedicated. They want to make a difference in society. But occasionally we have got those advocates. They are doing it for self-gain. I am an advocate. I speak up when there's a crowd. I appear to be nice. There's a promotion for me. There's a grant for me and so on. That's not authentic advocacy. So just to give you an example, we have to exercise authenticity. We got to be our true self. Not hide ourselves behind a screen. Present yourself as you are, as an open person, not as a closed person. There are far too many people in our society. We are closed, very secret. We want to keep things for ourselves. Fine, we can. We have to maintain confidentiality, but we got to be more open. Okay, we got to be more open. And physical, intellectual vitality relating to others, okay? Now, assumptions about gross domestic product, I'm also very critical about that. Every nation is fighting for more money. We believe, we have come up to a conception that the richer the nation, the happier the nation, and that's a fallacy. There is an assumption that enhancing economic growth is the best way to promote emotional well-being. That's a fallacy. But every country is creating business, trades. We have gone what we call technically rational driven. But critics argue that GDP is a flawed metric of global development and fails to determine what we would like to know about human emotional well-being. I very, very strongly believe that each government, each nation in their policy should have elements of leveraging emotional well-being in their policy. But do we have that? Mauritius might have. I'm not very sure. And then the needs for an increased focus on enhancing the emotional well-being. So we, as the Emotional Wellbeing Institute, we are very committed to leveraging emotional well-being of societies. So the capacity statement is a way forward is to address the challenges and to minimize the social issues through strengthening the emotional well-being of the nation. Public health strategies such as advocacy, public health education, communication, policy, legislative changes, communities and regional participation, research and evaluation. I would like to change the word into research and innovation, shall be used to enhance the emotional well-being. The emotional well-being framework is conceptualized as collective action for sustained population-wide improvement in emotional well-being. The framework, which I will show in a minute, demonstrates the effectiveness of strategies, programs, and processes. Now, these are the 17 SDGs, Sustainable Development Goal of the United Nations. We call it SDG 2030. we should achieve all of those goals. They're all very significant. They're all very important. So the goals we are working with as an institute is goal number 3, which is good health and well-being. Goal number 4, quality education. Goal number 5, gender equality. When you travel overseas, then you can see the gender inequality. It's tremendous. Then I'm very strong on goal 16 and 17. Goal 16 is peace and justice and developing strong institutions, responsible institutions. Our institute is very much based on goal 17, is partnerships for the goals. We are establishing synergy, cooperation, collaboration, consortium. I'll give you an example of that. So the Emotional Wellbeing Institute's framework is a dynamic entity. There shall be a need to combine the technical expertise of general emotional well-being concerned to realize the program. The Institute shall work in partnership and in synergy with organizations to deliver a variety of best practice models in services, advices, strategies, research, advocacies, and consultancies with reciprocal benefit. The Institute shall be an alliance with global members from within nations and regions, and the Institute's model shall be based on a lead provider model. Now, because of copyright, I've removed some of the stuff, but this is our model. I've got that on one page, so don't take any photos. All right? So in a nutshell, what we have in the middle is all the corporate organization. For example, we have got a global advisory board, and we have just appointed Professor Serge Riviere to be a member of that. We have got another person who's of Italian background, Australian, and he's a business person. He's responsible for 60,000 pharmacists and pharmaceutical companies providing educational programs and so on and so forth. Very experienced person. We are headhunting other person. I'm headhunting 2 persons at the moment. One is at a very senior level at the WHO, World Health Organization, and others, okay? We have got a board of directors, we have got institute solutions, we have got public relation and international relations sector and so on and so forth, okay? But what's important, very quickly, I learned through it, they've got different elements. We've got different elements here. I just run through it very, very quickly. So for example, we are concerned about practice development across professional careers, initial, foundation, transitional, and so on. Professional identities and culture, culture of professional practice, cultures of ethnicities. We got learning professional practice, community engagement, and so on. I just run through it. Now, over here, we have got all those trajectories. So I'll give you 2 examples: indigenous issues, successful aging issues, work-based well-being, and so on. Research is very important for us. Okay, this is where we are developing a doctorate program, Doctor in Emotional Well-being. So I've got about 36 candidates from different parts of the world. We'll prepare them to be champions. We'll prepare them to be advocates through this professional doctorate program. Because we can't do everything, the champion will have to, okay? And the social and ecological model of integration, this is one of the philosophy underpinning our institute: public policy, community, organizational, interpersonal, individuals. Now, this is a very interesting model. As part of that synergy, we have established 18 regions in the world. We talk about cluster regions. Each cluster regions would have a lot of different nations, 8 to 10. For example, West Africa has got 14 nations. I've just been presenting at Nepal. Nepal region got few countries there. A colleague of mine, who is also the president of the institute, he is a cluster director for Southeast Asia. In Southeast Asia, we got countries like Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Vietnam, East Timor, and countries like that, okay? And I'm looking at the moment of creating a region for the Indian Ocean region. So in that region, we'll have Mauritius, La Réunion, Madagascar, Seychelles, other countries. So we will need to have a regional director. So I'm headhunting at the moment for a director for this region. Each region has got not just a director, we have an advisory board. And the advisory board have got representation from each of those nations. So if we have got 10 or 12 nations in that region, each nation will have a representation in that advisory board. We're creating a chapter for that region. We're creating conference in that region. I've been talking more or less every day with a person from North Africa. He's from Morocco. Okay? We're discussing to implement a conference next year in collaboration with his own organization, which is very much concerned with children and adolescents, especially of children and adolescents from underprivileged countries. He's also working on a project with university, Belgium University. He is well connected with 3 universities in Morocco. So we are already talking about the 3 universities working together with his organization and the Emotional Wellbeing Institute. So there will be 4 partners to develop an international conference next year addressing disadvantaged children and adolescents. Okay, so can you see the difference we're making? So there will be opportunities not to present only papers, but to develop best practice models, to affiliate with other organizations and so on. I've just been presenting as a keynote to an international convention in education in Nepal. And my presentation was about emotional well-being and the COVID-19, how our societies are being affected, particularly how the society like Nepal is affected. We are educated citizens. When we have information coming to us, we can understand those information fairly well. But can you imagine some of the, but 60–70% of the people coming from villages? How can you make them understand the implication of, how can you make them understand that it's important to be confined? So these are some of the difficulties we're having, okay? So there you are. We got Canada, West Indies, Latin America, Western Europe, North Africa, West Africa, South Africa. We just appointed a regional director, Professor Cyril, that's his first name. He called himself Cyril, but he's a professor of medicine. So he's going to be devoting his time to be the cluster director for that region. Not just South Africa, but Southern Africa. Okay? And have already invited him to work together with a few of us to develop the doctorate in emotional well-being. That's very, very powerful. Okay? The person who is from Latin America, Anthony Chavez, he is the chief of his own tribes in Latin America, the Maya tribe. And he's a guardian of that tribe. And he represents that tribe at the United Nations level. And we are very fortunate to have him as a member of our institute. Okay? So the responsibilities to make it happen is not only my responsibility. It's not only the institute's responsibility. The responsibility is yours, mine, and ours. That's a very powerful statement I'm making. So the individuals and responsible agencies to identify natural and green holistic training. Not just training for the sake of training, but it has to be green holistic training. Education, research, professional development, and strategic solution. To minimize the sleeping pill. You know, we are very ready when we are in difficulties just to say, oh, that's not my problem, that's other people's problem. We take some form of, not literally, but we take some form of tranquilizers. We prefer to stay by ourselves. We prefer to stay aloof. We don't want to get involved. So we need to shift that. And the term iatrogenic I mentioned to you, the term hikikomori was introduced to me by this colleague from Japan. And after the war, what they discovered was a lot of the citizens in Japan, they were still experiencing what we call post-traumatic stress disorder. So instead of going and talking to people or with people and seeking help, they confined themselves. They confined themselves in the home because that was comfortable for them. It's comfort. So they became depressed and more depressed. They didn't socialize. And the term hikikomori came up. I quite like that. When you reflect on societies like Mauritius, for example, you can reflect on that. Find out for yourself how many individuals you know are experiencing this hikikomori effect. We live in recluse. We don't want to be involved in traumatic things. And instead of, in order to experience trauma, we prefer to be aloof. We prefer to be by ourselves, okay? So thank you for your participation. And I've got my number here. There's a website which is evolving and lots of good things happening. We are developing a referee journal. So there will be a journal of emotional well-being. So we'll have, it's a global, that will happen. We're developing compendium for short articles. So you can, please invite you to write short articles. We have also got short articles about anything to do with emotional well-being on our website, so you can contribute. Okay? And we are planning a conference in Mauritius next year, so I'll invite you to come along and give us a helping hand. That's our first international, truly international conference of emotional well-being. It's possibly going to be first or second week of November next year. It depends on the COVID, okay? We have already started doing work. And we have got a great plan to invite key people from UN, United Nations, WHOs, and so on and so forth. We are keen to collaborate with organizations like the Rotary. We have got some initial discussion taking place. We are keen to collaborate with other organizations. So keep an eye on that. So if you are looking for advancing emotional well-being, you may be ready to enroll in that professional doctorate program. Doctor in emotional well-being. It's not a PhD. It's not by doing a long thesis, which can take 4 or 5 years, but doing short-term projects which are basically creating best practice model in your area of specialty. Okay? Got 2 medical officers who've been interested in that. And they say, oh, what can we do? I said, well, you've got plenty to do. Can I ask you one question? When you treat your clients in hospitals, do you meet all their needs? Or are we still very much medical model orientated? 2/3, based on my research, 2/3 of individual patients' needs are based on psychosocial needs. Yet we are providing them with physical deliberation. So that's your research. You can research and find out to what extent you're meeting the whole, okay? I've got a bank manager, he's interested. Oh, I don't know what to do. I said, well, look, do you deal with clients? Yes. Do you give them loans? Yes. How many clients are not able to pay back their loans? Those people who are not able to pay back their loans, are they happy people? Or are they depressed, distressed, family breakdown, loss of employment and so on? So what's happening to their emotional well-being? So this is a topic for your research. So we'll have that, and we will be in a position to create as many champions across the world as possible. you're going to be working, the candidates are going to be working together as club members, learning from each other, not just academic work. I'm not concerned about coming up with a big research document and so on, but short, small-scale projects which are implementable, and most importantly, they are applied. I know I've been supervising a number of PhD students, beautifully bound PhD theses, but they're all sitting on the shelves of their libraries, looking good. They use their title PhD and so on, but what difference or differences they have made to society? That's questionable. If you're a candidate, the first thing I'm going to ask you is to bring a matchbox and buat zalimet. Bring a matchbox. And I would like you to write at the back of the matchbox, what difference are you going to make to society? If you convince me, then we can work backward and you do your project work. If you're able to implement those best practices, you become like a champion. You become like an advocate. You can work together with other communities in the world. You become like an advisor, a facilitator, and so on and so forth. That's what we're trying to do. So thank you very much, and I'm going to stop here.